Today's episode is about an existential crisis.
There is something really concerning happening to India's 200 million strong workforce. Nearly half of them, who are above the age of 45, have reached a point in their careers where they may have to retire much earlier than they planned. And that too against their will.
Yes. In fact, I spoke about this in an earlier episode of Daybreak. We spoke about the 40 or 50 something consultants, freelancers, part-time executives, or self-employed hustlers. We call them the unwilling retirees. These are people who've been forced to shift from their traditional jobs into these makeshift type of roles.
And looking for a job has become super difficult for them. And that, of course, is leading to a lot of financial issues and stress. In a nutshell, the usual career span that would last anything between 40 to 50 years even has been slashed by half almost, to just about 20 or 25 years.
Now, all of this is actually based on the findings of a very ambitious survey that was carried out by a reporter here in the Ken newsroom. Her name is Vanita Bhatnagar. The survey that she carried out was on career longevity. She wanted to understand how people perceive their careers long term and the career pivots that they were often forced to make.
Okay, but it's not all doom and gloom, because in the process, Vanita got to speak to a bunch of 40 and 50 somethings who figure out how to navigate these roadblocks and to remain forever employable.
Welcome to the 5th Friday special episode of Daybreak. I'm Snigdha.
And I'm Rahel. And once a week, Snigdha and I come together to talk about things in business and tech that interest the both of us.
And it won't just be us. Depending on what we're talking about, we'll also be bringing a bunch of really interesting people onto the podcast. In this episode, we talk to Vanita about how some of these unwilling retirees are trying to become forever employable.
Vanita also tells us some of the fascinating things she learned from the survey. And don't be under the impression that this episode is just for people over the age of 45. Some of the tips Vanita's sources had to offer are equally relevant to 20-somethings and 30-somethings.
Exactly. So hang in there.
So, Vanita, can you start by telling us what got you interested in the story in the first place?
Right. So while I was in law school, I have only seen very linear career paths. Like for us, if someone was looking to become a corporate lawyer, they would typically start as an associate, become a senior associate, and went on to become a partner. That was the career path, what we knew when we were studying law. But when I
Again, I'll just interrupt and tell our listeners, in case you're confused, law school, Vanita was a lawyer before she became a journalist, just so you know.
So post COVID, I was wondering that how people are looking at their careers now. Has their career aspirations changed? Like, what would a typical 40-year-old want from their career now when the way we work has also changed? Do they still want to continue and climb the corporate ladder, or do they want to explore newer areas? Or maybe are they looking to switch industries, or maybe they just want to retire? So with these set of questions in mind, and also one of my colleagues shared a Twitter thread in our Slack group, and we saw that there is a trend where people in their 40s are kind of feeling stuck, where they don't see a lot of growth opportunities in their existing companies, and when they're trying to pivot, it's also difficult at their age. And hence we thought that maybe we can do a story here.
So
Yeah.
the quintessential 9 to 5, go up the corporate ladder and retire at 60, those aspirations are changing pretty quickly, right?
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Also, again, for our listeners, this is a two-part story that Vanita's done. And actually, if you regularly listen to Daybreak, you'll remember, I think a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember exactly when, but we had done this story on unwilling retirees. And that was based on Vanita's first report. And I remember this very interesting quote from there that one of Vanita's sources had told her, right, Vanita, about something around the lines of like, if our prime minister is so active and he's working at the age of 75, why do we have to quit working after 40 or something like that, right?
Right.
So, Vanita's story is actually based on this very interesting survey that she carried out. And I think, Vanita, how many people responded to your survey?
Over 300 people.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it was about career longevity. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of questions that you were asking people?
Right. Before that, I'll also like to tell you, why we decided to do a survey for this story. Generally, for our stories, like we reach out to our sources and try to figure that, if there are already data points available. We could see here that there was a trend, but while I was speaking to recruiters and HR managers, we didn't really have clear numbers. So we decided that maybe, we'll run a survey for our subscribers to sort of understand that how do they see their careers, what is that they want after 40, how difficult it is for them when they're looking to move to another industry, or even when they're trying to find the next employment. What are the challenges do they face? Also, what is that they are prioritizing? Are they wanting to upskill, reskill? Do they want to take sabbaticals? Do they want to retire early? Or do they want to do freelance, go for gigs, become consultants? So, given all of these kind of options, we designed our survey and we received over. So, there were about 1,000 people who participated in the survey, but like people above 40 were only 300.
So, if you could tell us, just walk us through some of the biggest findings of this survey, Vanita. What were some of the things that kind of, surprised you? Tell us.
Right. So we found that about 85% people said that they feel their career spans are shortening from the traditional 40 to 45 years. Like what Rahel mentioned earlier, that, people would take a job and they would, sit at that one company and reach up till the top. But now they kind of feel that their careers are becoming shortened. Like, they only have like 20 years to 25 years of a runway. That's what 85% people said in the survey. And over 64% of people said that they do not find growth opportunities at their current company. They kind of feel that they have reached the glass ceiling owing to their age. And beyond that point, they don't see any growth within that existing company.
Wow. Okay, so there's so much to unpack there. But to start with, Vanita, can you tell me if this kind of trend is being seen across industries or if there are some industries that are affected by it more than others?
So definitely we see this more playing out in tech, manufacturing, retail and pharma as compared to consultancies. So that's there.
Okay, why those industries though?
Because in tech particularly, like for example, something that a person might be doing at 40, like their younger colleague who joins maybe at 25 and 30, they're already updated with that technology and they're able to do that faster. Like, what that person might have been doing after so many years of experience. However, in consultancy, because it's more about advisory roles, their professionals still have a longer runway because it's more about experience and advising businesses as compared to core specific skills.
Vanita, I had one more question. I just wanted to understand how are people, of course, you understood the scale of this because of the kind of responses that you got in your survey, but how are people individually coming to this realization, that their career spans may be getting shorter? Because you did speak to people across all age groups. Like, if you can give us some individual examples.
So, for instance, Mr. Srinivasan, he worked with Oracle for 2 decades. He became a developmental manager in 2012, and then for next 7 years, he was at the same position. And he was only 42 then. So he sort of realized that, how long I'm going to be in the same position. Because after that, promotions were not happening. Like, he had certain opportunities, but those didn't really add up to the kind of growth that he was expecting. Like, he was only, so if he was managing X amount of people, if he was managing X number of people, it was only increasing that. But in a sense, he was not seeing any growth in the kind of work that he was doing. So for 7 years, he sort of felt that even though he was working at this big technology company, he kind of felt stuck. And that's when he took a sabbatical for 2 years and revisited what probably he could do next in his career. And retirement was absolutely out of question for him because he had his daughter, like he had to finance his daughter's education, who was just about to start college. And also, he was only 46.
Right.
He was wondering that, what next probably he could do.
Yeah, suddenly, we've been actually on the other side. We're going through this phase where we're like, oh, 40s is the new 30s and 30s is the new 20s. But on the other side, after getting to know about what's happening here, it feels like, oh my God, 40 is old.
Also, there's an interesting statistic here,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't be a Daybreak episode without an interesting statistic. Interesting and also partly quite terrifying, but apparently in technology, only a tiny fraction, and by that I mean literally a little over 1%, are still working past 50. So there's that. But coming back to what Snigdha just said, it's really funny because suddenly it's like longer life expectancy doesn't really seem like such a great idea, right? We're all going to live till like 70,
I know.
fingers crossed. But, the last 20 or 30 years, you're actually staring at this very real prospect of being unemployed, right? Retirement is fantastic. It's great and all. But it's great only
Yeah.
when you get to choose it for yourself.
Exactly. So lifespan is increasing. We're going to live for longer, but we won't be employed for as long as we used to be employed for. So that is, we're really stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Right, Vanita?
Yeah, and there's also this pyramid effect, which sort of means that when at the bottom of the pyramid there are obviously more jobs, but when you have more and more experience at the top, there are lesser opportunities. So when you have like a longer life, where will you sort of put yourself? How will you plan that journey for yourself?
All right, but there is still some hope, and Vanita kind of talks about that in the second part of her story. Vanita, you spoke to some people who have kind of figured out how to hack this, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, how have they figured out how to work around to stay employed for longer?
Right, Snigdha. So, a lot of employees that I spoke with told me that how they are looking for ways in which they can stay forever employable. Now, forever employability hinges upon how a person creates a certain level of expertise in an area where they work and build a personal brand that will ensure that work will always find them. Now, this could be done as a consultant, freelancer, someone who's working as a gig worker, or working as an in house employee too, where it might involve lateral movements or negotiating in a way that works for both the employee and the employer. So, for instance, like if you take my own example, that if I'm not finding enough growth opportunities in editorial, I might want to reconsider working maybe for the product team, maybe in the podcast team. So, I mean, growth does not always have to be vertical, it could also be lateral. And in another instance, what we saw in the story was this lady called Naresh, who was working as a business head at Mercer. She, when she retired at 60, she did not quit the consulting firm. Instead, she became an advisor with them. So that
Right.
kind of gave a cushioning to both Mercer and Naresh, where Mercer sort of had her expertise. She already knew, like, she's been with the company for years. So she already knew how they work. And through her expertise, she was able to mentor younger people. She was able to help them with presentations, pitch deck, and all of that. And along with that, it also allowed younger people to, sort of keep growing within the organization. So without taking that space, for younger people, both Mercer and Naresh like sort of created a middle way out sort of a thing.
Yeah, so that's great because both get something out of it.
Okay, so basically that kind of comes back to what we were talking about a little while ago as well, right? Vanita, right, Snigdha? We were talking about how for the longest time we looked at our conventional idea of what a career should look like is kind of like, you're constantly climbing up this imaginary ladder. It's very linear in that sense.
True.
Right? So even if you say jump jobs, you're generally staying within the ambit of one particular sector or a particular specialization. So, I mean, there are also the likelihood of you, say, for instance, if I were a political reporter, I'd be looking for other gigs as a political reporter that may maybe offer more money or more opportunity. But that isn't necessarily the case when you're thinking about a long-term career, right? You're supposed to think big, think beyond that, pick a non-linear path. Can you tell us what some of your, the survey respondents, the people that you spoke to, what they had to say? How does that non-linear path usually play out?
Right. So, if we consider the example of Kushagra, now Kushagra Gupta, he's just 38 years old. He has left his corporate job and he's doing a bunch of things currently. So earlier he was working as a marketing head for big brands like Pfizer, Dr. Reddy's, Stride Pharma. But he decided that instead of staying in the race of climbing the corporate ladder, he would choose an unconventional career path and he decided to become a fractional CMO, a fractional chief marketing officer. Now, what he does as a fractional CMO is that he provides his consultancy services to nascent businesses where he helps them build the marketing function from ground zero. And once it is built, like he quits and he creates that setup where the company can go on after that function is created. Apart from that, he's also running his own boutique marketing firm called Brand Scalers that sort of provide marketing related services. Like, for example, if someone is looking to run a digital campaign, marketing campaigns, looking to hire influencers and all of that. So this is like an adjacent to it, but he has this separate firm altogether. And besides this, he's also engaged in two more roles. One is that he has founded a council of fractional leaders, fractional CXOs in Telangana, where people from across industries like technology, manufacturing, pharma, CTOs, CMOs, CFOs, they all come together and they sort of share their own experiences and help nascent businesses with kind of expertise that they have. So he's founded this organization. He's running this council. And apart from that, he's also mentoring young startups. As a Stanford seed mentor, he's also mentoring young startups on whatever. So it's like a 40-minute call where whatever concerns the founders of these young companies have, he helps them navigate those challenges. Now, these last two things that we spoke about, Council of Fractional CXOs and being a mentor, these are not paid roles, but that allows him, yeah, but it allows him to tap into a network that he probably wouldn't have if he was doing like a traditional job. And through this network, he's able to get more opportunities, build his expertise. Like, for example, one day he's mentoring an AI startup, the other day he's speaking to someone who's deep into technology, or maybe like a pharma company, very different from each other. So that way he's able to garner more experience and expertise across sectors, and at the same time he's also able to meet like a lot of new people, which typically you and I, if we stick to like just one kind of a role, it's not possible.
That sounds both exciting and deeply exhausting.
Yeah, that's true. But okay, so Vanita, you mentioned obviously not all of these roles are paid, these non-linear paths that somebody like Kushagra has taken. Like, it's a lot of it is just for the networking and meeting new people. So it's not necessary that you'll get paid for it. So we'll get to the money and the networking part later. But Kushagra is somebody who is a CXO, right? Chief Experience Officer. But not everybody rises to top leadership, right? He already had that, which probably means that it was kind of easier for him to go the non-linear path, right? But not everybody rises to the top leadership. So what about those people? What are they doing to stay more relevant and employable?
Right. Professionals are also considering upskilling or reskilling in order to get re-employed. Like, for example, I spoke with this person, a 50-year-old man, Mohinder Guglani, who has been working as an assistant general manager at Punjab National Bank for past decade or so. But his retirement was due in next 2 years. So, but neither did he had a willingness to retire or a financial cushion to retire at that stage. So he decided that he'll write certain examinations again to sort of see that where he can get an opportunity. So he wrote this exam called Limited Insolvency Examination that is conducted by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India. Now, under that code, it allows people to be appointed as an insolvency officer. Now, someone who will look after when a company is going for insolvency.
So, if you could take a step back and kind of see where things stand right now, right? Would it be fair to say that, instead of finding that one 9 to 5 you want to do till the day you die, basically what a lot of people now are doing is thinking long term, which means instead of choosing that one job, you're constantly like tweaking your career path, right, to stay in the game for longer, right? There's an interesting cricket analogy that you used in your story, Vanita. Do you want to share that with us?
Right. So it says that, you just have to figure the pitch, how's the pitch, and then sort of bat. So, giving another example, just like your insolvency and bankruptcy code, people with years of corporate experience, they also have an opportunity to become a director within a company or become a board member. Because after working for like 30 years in a corporate sector, you do have a holistic understanding about how companies work, and younger companies like your MSMEs, startups, they do need that kind of guidance. So the board member role allows you to do that. And a lot of these people, like this is flexible. They get paid on when they sit on the board, they get paid sitting fees. And for this also, so earlier, people had this misconception that only people who are in law or from a certain background can become an independent director. But that's not correct. Like, for independent director as well, there is an exam that's been conducted. And anybody who clears that exam, even for, and it does not have an age bar. So even, maybe Snigdha or Rahel, anybody, like, we can write the exam and be on the data bank of that independent directorship and, can mentor companies around that.
Okay. Right. So, Vanita, upskilling sounds like it is one way to, kind of get out of this, dead end, right? But also it does sound easy, but it can't be because the age thing comes into play, right? Like, for example, how difficult it is for us to learn a new language after a certain age. So it must not be easy to pick up a skill, for employees of this age bracket. So what are some of the trouble points that they usually face when they're learning a new skill?
Right, Snigdha. But I think it all boils down to the fact how much fire do you have in your belly, and how much does a person want to excel at maybe trying something new or look forward towards moving their career. Because, right, like you said, that upskilling or training yourself from the beginning is very hard after a particular age. But in my reporting, what I have realized is that people like, for example, Srinivasan, that I spoke for the unwilling retiree story, or here in this case, Mr. Shyam Sundar or Sumit Ghosh, they all have been doing variety of things, and for some things are absolutely different, like something that they have not done earlier in their careers at all. Like, I'll give you an example. So Ghosh is also a core team member of the Eco Web project. So this is basically an initiative by a Climate Tech Action Network. However, earlier he's worked in a finance company. He's worked for multinational consumer goods conglomerates, New York Life Insurance, like those kind of companies he's worked before. So this climate tech project is an absolutely different thing for him. But why he did this was, number one, he was getting to explore something or delve into something he has never done before. And that sort of brings that excitement. There's also, so when you're starting something new, it's challenging, of course, but there's also a lot of excitement to it. And in my opinion, and through my reporting, like whatever I've come across, it's whenever people have that fire in the belly and they want to keep moving parts, keep experimenting, are the people who sort of stay forever employable.
Right. So, Vanita, upskilling also, I mean, it's a great way to kind of find a way around this trend. But also, it does mean spending more money, right? Like, for example, I remember you gave the example, you talked to this guy who told you he was in his 40s and he wanted to do an MBA or something, and that would cost like tens of lakhs. But he had to make such a tough choice. It was so difficult because he had a kid who was also studying and he wanted to spend good money on their education, right?
That's correct, Snigdha. Like upskilling is not easy because it does involve money, depending upon what you want to pursue at that stage. Hence, what some of these people recommended here was that it should be a part of your overall career strategy. Like sometimes when we are planning our careers, we don't really sit out and budget for upskilling. We only look at,
Hmm.
like, a lot of times people have a very limited view, and they would only kind of think that from here, in the next 2 years I want to become this, then in the next 3 years I want my salary to be this, in the next 5 years I want to be up till this position. But in that process, we are not taking in account how much are we ready to spend on upskilling. And also,
Hmm.
like, one person was telling me, this kushagra person only, that how sometimes it's not always about spending on these courses. It could also be about learning through your network. Like what he does specifically at Stanford Seed, like he undertook that whole program so that here he's not putting his money, he's putting his time, and through his time, while speaking with startup founders from across sectors, he's trying to learn about different challenges they face and how they combat those challenges now, which in itself is a great learning experience.
Hmm.
So it sometimes it's also about how creative you can get with it. And also the courses that we spoke about, like this insolvency professional exam or your independent director exam, those are not very expensive, like just a couple of thousands.
Got it.
And
Okay.
kind of shifting the lens from how much money you're investing to your ROI, with these courses.
Hmm.
Hinted at this a little while earlier, but if you could talk about the sort of money that, say, someone like Kushagra, for instance, he's doing all these different things. Are these people still making the same money they did, before, as
When they were
compared
fully employed.
when they were fully
Hmm.
employed?
Not always, Rahel. Sometimes it's lesser as well. Even when people are pivoting from one job to another, they have to like take a pay cut. Like even Srinivasan, when he moved from Oracle to this startup where he's working as a blockchain developer, he had to
Mm.
undertake a pay cut. So finances might not always be rosy. So there is
So
a
it's a trade-off,
there's a financial implication, definitely, but
right?
it does bring in a huge amount of flexibility that allows people to explore different options.
Right, right. There's always that trade-off.
Right. So, okay, next question again is related to money. So, basically, even if they do get, they do manage to get back into the workforce, especially as consultants or freelance professionals, they just have to make do with lesser money. I mean, it's just something that they all need to come to terms with. Or have you come across any cases where they actually ended up making more money? I don't know.
More money, not exactly, but like in the case of Sen Gupta, so she's almost making the same amount of money. Like, it's not more, but she's almost there. But like I said, that, it's about making that money for a longer period of tenure. So if you keep that in view, I think their overall compensation that they're getting, becomes more.
Vanita, can you just tell us who is Sen Gupta, a little bit about her
Yeah, so she's
background?
a 59-year-old woman from Bangalore who's ventured through multiple companies, tried her hand at different things. Like she started her career as a marketing executive for a tech company, ORG Systems. And then she progressed into a profit center management roles. She subsequently was overseeing corporate communications and people development at Sonata Software. And then most recently, she was working as corporate affairs and communications operations at Barclays, which is an investment banking company.
Got it. Okay.
So after she left Barclays, she's been working as a freelance consultant. And she had like one of her biggest projects was with State Bank of India, where she was helping employees in crafting their communication strategy.
Right, but it kind of comes back to another one of those existential questions, right, Vanita? No matter how much you're saving, it's just not going to be enough, right? And for a lot of these people, it's just impossible to kind of beat inflation also. Like, for instance, if a 30-year-old, for example, is spending about 3 lakhs as annual expenses, you're looking at this figure going up to nearly like 2 crore by the time they turn 90, assuming a steady 7% inflation rate.
That's correct, Rahil, and hence retirement for people now is it's becoming questionable, right? Unless you have like there are pension funds, government sponsored. It's a different case, but otherwise, retirement for private sector employees is becoming a tough call, and therefore the need to stay forever employable increases, and people have to constantly look for maybe position themselves in a way where they constantly keep getting work at 60, 70, 80 with whatever the market requirements are. You can't
Got it.
say that I'm a computer engineer and I'll continue to do that for like next 50, 60 years.
Right. So I think now we've talked quite a bit about the money angle. Now let's get to networking, what you mentioned earlier, right, Vanita? Now we hear this word thrown around a lot in our daily lives. Everybody wants to do it, but somehow most of us don't know exactly how to approach it, right? We do it for different reasons, which in this case would be to kind of networking would be optimized to elongate the person's career, right? So what is their approach? Like, what are 40 plus or people close to hitting 40 or over 40? How are they approaching networking?
So networking would essentially have three parts to it. So one of the expert who coaches mid to senior level career professionals in career transitions said that when he's mentoring people, only like 2 out of 10 people can rely on their network for a job referral. And generally, when hiring happens at senior position, it happens through referrals. You would not want to give like a very senior position to someone who's completely new to you. You would want to like do certain background checks, and hence network is a very important aspect. Also, in the second story, the forever employability story, there was one example where a woman was able to find a job again because she was in touch with people who are way younger to her. So sometimes, when we think about networking, we think that we only have to network with people of our own age or maybe people who are senior to us. But we kind of forget that people junior to us may be the one, who might be soon enough, they'll be leading positions at different corporates. So hence, networking has to be like you have to network with your seniors, your age group, your juniors, like it has to be across all age groups. It cannot be limited just to one age group. And apart from that, it also has to be cross industry. So this one person that I spoke with was telling me that before they decided to make a career transition, they would go on and speak with these people from different sectors, different industries to sort of understand what challenges they encounter, how are they navigating day-to-day life, because when you're younger, you still have a long runway to make errors and there's room for failure. But at 40, 51, there is also financial responsibility. You want to be like a little more sure of the decisions that you're making, and hence, spending a lot of time with others. So this person was saying that, how they would always attend conferences on different topics. So tomorrow, if they want to maybe develop an expertise in certain area, they would attend conferences on those topics. They would attend network lunches, and all of that, sort of help them build uh, you know a group of professionals, a group of friends that could later on help them in finding new jobs, or also give them insights about what working in that sector looks like.
Okay, so you said something interesting there, Vanita. You were talking about that one woman who was able to get a job through a younger colleague that she had in her network, right? So not it's one way to look at it is, okay, they're your competition, you're competing with them, but there's also a huge opportunity there, right? You can leverage that network that you have of younger colleagues.
So definitely, Rahil, this works in two ways. That number one, if you consider this another example that I have quoted in the story about Shyam Sundar. Now he is an active cyclist. He's a music composer, and his group of friends are a bunch of 20-year-old, 30 years old. And he was telling me during our call that he learns a lot of softer aspects from these younger folks in informal discussions about life, about trends, about how they approach careers, or how they work. And that sort of helps him in devising his own strategies, or, look at things differently. So, and also to add on to it, upskilling always doesn't have to be necessarily about joining a course, or getting yourself into an MBA program or something like that. It could also be about learning how your younger colleagues are approaching problems, how they are approaching certain things. So having a younger people in your network definitely does help.
So, Vanita, I think we've spoken enough about what we as employees can do to stay quote unquote forever hireable, right? Uh, can we now flip the lens to employers, and can you tell us what can they do, to make this better for, senior professionals?
Right. Considering the demographics, if corporations do not strategize on how to hire older workforce, they will end up competing for a limited talent pool of overworked middle-aged professionals, who will then feel the burned out even faster, leading to a fall in productivity and even crisis. Hence, it's important that corporates also sort of devise strategies where they can employ these people. Like, for example, what happened in the case of Mercer, instead of letting go Naresh completely, they made her an advisor. So that helped them in training future leaders for the company. And also, whenever their team felt stuck about something, they always had Naresh to rely on for opinion, feedback, etc. A similar, something similar is also done by certain companies like Flipkart, Genpact, where they're hiring retired army professionals. Also, recently,
Hmm.
in medical, doctors are also getting rehired in certain states like Punjab, Rajasthan, Bihar. So there is a change that we are seeing around the corner where companies are coming around, but I think it's a long way to go.
All right, Vanita, I mean, that was very insightful, I mean, after reading your first story, I honestly, after, I covered it on Daybreak, I was feeling quite hopeless. I was like, oh my God, it's not very long till the point I reach 40. But after reading the second part, I'm very hopeful. So I think we can end the conversation by asking you this question, like, what were the biggest takeaways for you, from your experience of covering the story?
For me, I think the biggest thing is to stay agile. You cannot be boxed into, say that I've done this role for X years, and I can continue to do only X for next coming years as well. You cannot allow yourself to box into that category. So it will always be about reinventing And at the same time, sometimes while so even the story was an eye opener for me, that while working, sometimes we get so laser focused in our everyday tasks that we forget to look at that big picture. So it's important to sort of zoom out and look at that big picture and see for ourselves just how typically corporations plan for how they will run for next 5 years. It's also
Hmm.
important for employees to take that step back and kind of see how their career will span for the next 5 years. And the most important thing here is that while you're making this plan, you cannot do it in silos. You cannot sit with yourself and plan that, okay, next year I'm going to do this. You got to have insights from others. You got to ask feedback from your colleagues, from your seniors, from your own network, and see what your skills are. So one of the organization behavioral specialist was telling me that how sometimes we also require a mindset shift. Because I would,
Hmm.
like, for instance, if I'm a writer, I would always believe that I can only do jobs that are relating to writing or reporting. So even in my next stint, I might find something that is similar to this. But until
Correct.
and unless I explore other sides, maybe if I get a feedback that, okay, you're also good at problem solving, maybe. Until and unless I explore those other aspects, I might not know or might not discover what are those other things that I can do as well apart from this.
Hmm.
So I think it's time for slash careers. You can no longer say that I'm X. Like, your identity cannot be just about that X role. It has to be multiple roles, which you also have to like constantly keep reinventing through the journey.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Vanita. It's been so good talking to you.
Thanks,
Very, very
Vanita.
interesting. Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of the Ken, India's first subscriber focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber only offerings.
A full subscription unlocks daily long form feature stories, newsletters, and podcast extras. Head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the Ken website.
Today's episode was hosted and produced by Rahel Philippos and I, Snigdha Sharma, and it was edited by Rajiv CN.